The East Side Gallery. 1.3 kilometers long, this stretch of the Berlin Wall is the biggest open-air museum in the world. It was painted by artists from East and West after the collapse of communism. Many of the paintings were recently restored. Photographer Heinz Kuzdas has been documenting the Berlin Wall since the mid-1980s. It looked very different prior to 1989. Back then, Kuzdas' work was a political statement.
To me,
the camera is a vehicle. It allows me to explore a theme. The wall bothered me a lot. Then it became increasingly colorful, and so it was an obvious subject.
These murals are long gone. They disappeared when the rest of the wall was torn down 20 years ago. Heinz Kuzdas has over 3,000 photos in his archive. He only documented the west side. In the east, it was completely bare and stood inside a military zone most East Germans were not allowed to enter. For West Germans, scrawling graffiti on the wall was often a spontaneous form of protest against the division of Germany.
Someone would paint something one day, and then someone else would come along and finish it off the next day. In fact, it was usually at night. Or something was added or drawn over part of it. It was like a barometer of the zeitgeist.
One of the pioneers of wall art is Thierry Noir. The French artist recently recreated the motif he first painted in the 1980s for the revamped East Side Gallery. In those days, he lived in a house close to the wall in West Berlin.
At one point, I realized how depressing it was to see all this tristesse daily. So a few years later, in April 1984, I spontaneously started painting the wall. And from then on, people were always asking me things. So I had to do some research. Because I'd finished school in France, but I'd never learned anything about the Berlin Wall and Germany. The division, we never learned about that in school.
His work on the Berlin Wall made Thierry Noir famous. It even features in the iconic Wim Wenders movie, Wings of Desire. These days he's moved on, although his cartoon figures are still his trademark. Thierry Noir has long been able to make his living as an artist. His style owes a lot to his early days as a graffiti artist.
It was illegal to paint on the wall, and that influenced my style. I didn't use much detail, a minimum of color, and I worked fast. Afterwards, I'd come back. I keep improving my work all the time. You can see, 2 ideas, 3 colors, mix it all up, and the picture is already done.
Heinz Kuzdas has published a book that captures the eclecticism of Berlin wall art, which is now in its 10th edition. It also includes the work featured at the East Side Gallery. And it's very different to the early wall art. A lot of it is more considered and carefully executed.
The motifs here at the East Side Gallery are so varied, it's hard to see any common thread.
The artwork is the only reason why this stretch of the wall still stands. Thierry Noir and Heinz Kuzdas are among the artists making sure this piece of history survives.